Hey y'all, welcome to TXC Tells All. So I wanted to come on the show today and do a little update on COVID-19 and workers' rights because I did a video before on COVID-19 and the Families First Coronavirus Response Act a few months ago. When we first started quarantining and these issues first started coming up in the workplace. But I also wanted to do an update as things, have changed. People have, stopped working remotely in a lot of industries and have gone back to work. So I'm an employment lawyer. I do employment discrimination. And, I thought now would be a good time to kind of address some of the, concerns that people may have about COVID-19, workers' rights, FMLA, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act and what's available. And also, a lot of my clients and potential clients are having a lot of questions about disability discrimination and what happens, when you are afflicted by COVID-19 or a family member is, and it causes serious health conditions that can qualify as disabilities. How does the Americans with Disabilities Act intertwine with the FMLA or FFCRA, that's the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, what can an employer do, what is not allowed, what is considered discrimination, and, in the very unfortunate event that you are terminated because of some of these issues, what would be considered wrongful termination under, some of the federal guidelines. Actually, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission did a webinar on this just last month in March, and that webinar is available online. So, if you have questions about COVID-19 and what the federal government is saying workers' rights are, that EEOC webinar might be really helpful. One thing I can say is some of the provisions in the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, they were supposed to end December 31st of 2020, but they've actually been extended out to September 30th of 2021. So some of those things, obviously we're still in a state where, people are still being affected by coronavirus, and the government is acknowledging that, especially in the workplace, and extending some of the additional help and extending also some of the qualifying reasons that you can get paid sick leave or paid family leave. So let's go over a few of those. Bear with me because this is my first live, so I am working on it, and I want to make sure I see if anybody has any questions. So give me 1 second. Let me just make sure that I'm not missing anybody's questions. Of course, this will be streamed to our video, so if the live doesn't work out, I hope people still get information from this video. Let me just double check and see if there is anybody with any questions. Let me just double check and see. I don't see anybody on here right now, and I don't want you to hear me talking, so let me turn this. Okay. So one of the qualifying reasons before they did the extension was that you could get paid sick leave or paid family leave was you were, subject to a local quarantine. So let me just back up and give a little background on the FFCRA. So it applies to private employers with less than 500 employees. Now, I talk about this all the time with colleagues and sometimes clients or potential clients who might call, and they're like, well, why did the government only make the FFCRA applicable to people with 500 or less employees? You would think that some of the larger companies that have 500 plus employees would be obligated to follow the FFCRA, but unfortunately, how it's written is for people who have, or not people, but companies, employers who have 500 or less employees. If your company has more than 500 employees, it doesn't mean that they can't voluntarily abide by the FFCRA, but they are not going to be obligated to by the government. So before the expansion, I'm just going to read some of the qualifying reasons that you would get paid sick leave or paid family leave under the FFCRA. And those were: the employee is subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation related to COVID-19. Two, the employee has been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine. Three, the employee is experiencing COVID-19 symptoms and is seeking a diagnosis. So that basically means, you think you may have COVID and you're waiting. You may have had a COVID test and you're waiting to see. Four, the employee is caring for an individual who is subject to quarantine or is self-quarantining. So that could be, your child was exposed to COVID-19 at school and they have to quarantine, and obviously you need to be home with them in order to do that. The employee is caring for a child whose school or place of care is closed. So let's say the daycare has been, somebody in the daycare, like a teacher, had COVID-19, so they actually have to shut the place down, and obviously you have to stay at home and care for your child. Or the employee is experiencing any other substantial similar illness related to COVID-19. So that is kind of like a broad catch-all. So those were the qualifying reasons to get paid sick leave or paid family leave under the FFCRA prior to April 1st, 2021. So today is April 10th, 2021. And they've actually expanded. So the government has actually expanded the reasons that you may be able to get paid sick leave or paid family leave. And that is, if an employee is seeking or awaiting results of a diagnostic test after exposure to COVID. So before, it was you think you may have COVID and you are waiting on test results. They expanded it a little bit to just say, if you have a COVID test and you're awaiting the results, you may also be able to get paid leave. So as we know, with like the PCR test, it usually takes like 2 to 3 days for you to get your test results. So now they've expanded it to where if you're in that 2 to 3 day time period, you could get paid leave for that if your employer is obligated to follow the FFCRA, so under 500 employees, and meets the other elements of that. Now, check out my other video I did on COVID-19. In that video, I lay out in more detail what the requirements are for an employer to be subjected to the FFCRA, and also the amount of leave that you would be allowed to have. So the amount of hours of paid sick leave or paid family leave that you would be allowed to have if you fall under one of these qualifying reasons. So another reason that that was expanded after April 1st of 2021 was if an employee is obtaining an immunization related to COVID. So if you're getting your COVID shot, that if your employer is subjected to the FFCRA, you can get paid leave to go ahead and get your COVID shot. So for people who are worrying about taking time off work, find out if you are, if you qualify for the FFCRA where you work, and then go ahead and take advantage of that paid leave. That's something that you can ask your human resources representative or, your manager. And especially, obviously, if you've had issues with COVID-19 from, last year to now, you probably already know if your employer is offering FFCRA paid leave. So if you need to go and get your COVID test, that's something that you can get paid for. So that's kind of some of the updates with the qualifying reasons that you can get paid leave for COVID. I also wanted to talk about, I think I have a question coming in now. What about if you have an adverse reaction to the COVID vaccine? So that is a good question. You will qualify for leave. So if you have a serious medical condition that results from getting COVID-19, getting the COVID-19 vaccine, that does qualify as a reason that you can get paid leave. So that falls under the FFCRA. And also that kind of leads me into my next point. Even if your employer doesn't fall under the FFCRA, even if they have, let's just say 500 or more employees, that means that they're still obligated to work within the Americans with Disabilities Act. And within that act, it protects employees that suffer from a disability. So let's say that you have a very serious reaction to a COVID-19 vaccine or serious reaction to COVID, and your medical condition limits a major life function. So let's say your ability to sleep, walk, to work, to drive. Side effects could be, you have to get medication and it's not safe for you to drive. So if you have a reaction to the COVID vaccine or a COVID-19 complication, that will qualify as a disability. Even if your employer doesn't follow the FFCRA because they have, let's say, 500 or more employees, they would still have to file the ADA. So what they have to do, and this is what I'm seeing a lot in my practice, that employers are just not, all the way getting. What they have to do is they're obligated under the law, under federal law, to engage in what's called the interactive process with you. So they can't just say, oh, you can't be out, you have to be out of work because you have a COVID-19 related illness, you're fired. That's not how it works. If they have 50 or more employees, and here in Texas, it's actually 15 or more employees because there's also a state anti-discrimination law, based on disability. They have to engage in an interactive process with you to see if they can accommodate you. So what that means is if you're, presenting a doctor's note that says, Tracy had a COVID-19 vaccine related illness that is causing her not to be able to walk or lift her arms or work because she can't drive and she can't drive to work. And she needs a accommodation to work remotely for 2 weeks. That is a possibly reasonable accommodation, especially for a lot of us. We've worked remotely. So now it's kind of negating the employers to be able to say, well, you can't work remotely. That just doesn't work for our business. A lot of people have been working remotely. So if an issue comes up where you just need an accommodation to work remotely and your employer has 50 or more employees, they will fall under the ADA. And that means, like I said, they have to engage in the interactive process with you and see if they can reasonably accommodate you. So that means you saying, hey, company, I have this and this illness. Here's my doctor's note. Can I be accommodated? That triggers the employer to say, either their human resources department or their human resources department or your manager to say, okay, well, let me engage in a discussion with this employee to see if I can accommodate them. So what I'm seeing a lot now is employers are saying, oh, well, we don't have to file the FFCRA. So whenever somebody has a COVID-19 issue, we can just terminate them. But that's not true. They can't skip over the step of following the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is still in full force and effect. So you would have to, hold on one second. Sorry about that. So I've been advising, employees to make sure that they pay attention to that. And if they need accommodations, they have two kind of buckets they can look at. They can look at the FMLA, which is, excuse me, the Family Medical Leave Act, the FFCRA, which is the expansion related specifically to COVID, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and then they also need to look at the ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act. Also, if I know Texas has the Texas Labor Code, which controls discrimination in the workplace and applies to disability as well, which can come up with COVID-19 related leave issues. I'm sure, I know New Jersey has this anti-discrimination statute as well, California, New York. So also look at your state statute to see if there's any laws in your state that deal with reasonable accommodations because of a disability that could stem from COVID and things like that. So you don't just have to look at the ADA. Okay, so yeah, so I think that kind of gives, you guys an update. As far as I did want to touch on real quick before I got off live, cases. So I have, I do employment discrimination law. And as an attorney, we are looking to see what the courts are going to say about terminations related to COVID. I was terminated, and I think I was wrongfully terminated because I got sick after I got COVID-19. There have been some cases filed, but because they're so new, they have not been adjudicated yet. So a judgment by a judge or a jury hasn't come out yet. There has been some rulings where companies have had these cases filed against them and they've tried to get them dismissed on a motion to dismiss, which happens early in the case. And there have been some rulings favorable to the employee that says, no, we're not going to dismiss these cases. We think these cases are actually viable under the Americans with Disabilities Act and some of the state anti-discrimination laws. So I'll probably do another video kind of running down some of those cases so we can kind of follow them and see what happens, because as I get potential clients calling in, especially when they've been terminated after getting COVID-19, or the company not wanting to accommodate an employee that has a disability. So what we're seeing a lot is people have underlying conditions, disabilities that make them more susceptible to getting COVID-19 or having serious complications from COVID-19. And they ask companies for a reasonable accommodation to either work remotely or, be able to social distance. And, I know Texas had removed the mandate that you wear masks. So that's really concerning to some people with disabilities that have to go back into the workplace. So they're asking for reasonable accommodations. And in some cases, these requests are being denied, and then these employees are eventually getting terminated, and they are bringing lawsuits against some of these companies to see if they have a case for wrongful termination. So I've been following some of those cases. I'll probably do another video on, what those claims are, and, what the courts are saying as these cases develop. So if you have some questions about COVID-19 and workers' rights, make sure you leave them in the comment section below. I would be happy to answer any questions. Obviously, this video is just for informational purposes. It's not an attorney-client relationship, and I can't technically give attorney-client type legal advice on these videos, but I did want to share some information from my experience and research. If you feel like you've been, terminated, or you're being discriminated against in the workplace because of COVID-19 related issues, or you're just not sure what your rights are, make sure you do contact an attorney if you think, you do need some additional help, even just a consultation to ask your specific questions and, find out how the law applies to your particular issue. I hope this did help, though. Also, check out the first video that I did on COVID-19. I'll put that in the description, and it does give some more details on what leave you can expect through the federal laws and how much you can expect to get paid and all of that. Thanks for watching. It's my first live, so I hope it went okay. I hope you guys can hear me and there was no technical difficulties. And we'll plan to do some more lives in the future, so make sure you check us out. Hit the like button if you like this video, and also make sure you hit that subscribe button. We post new videos every single week. Take care.